Okay, I think we've got everything set. So welcome to Beaches Watch, to our Jacksonville At-Large Candidate Forum. I'm Maria Mark, and I'm the president of Beaches Watch. I will also be the moderator for this evening's forum. So tonight we have Lisa King, who is running for Group 1 at-large, and we have the incumbent, Councilman Tommy Hazuri, who's running for Group 3 at-large. Unfortunately, Mr. Freeman was not able to make it tonight, and Mr. Rochelle, who was Lisa King's opponent, had a family emergency. So we now have the two candidates here. Oh, I'm sorry. I think Rochelle was running against Councilman Hazuri. Sorry. So a couple of things. A couple of housekeeping things. So I wanted to let you guys know about our May 1st meeting. It's going to be held at the Beaches Chapel, which normally we have our meetings at the library in Neptune Beach, but because of early voting, we're having to move that meeting. So it's going to be at the Beaches Chapel. The subject of that meeting is basically about what to do after the hurricane. If you experience damage to your house or property or whatever. So we're having a panel of 4 experts. One is a gentleman who's actually flying down from Washington, D.C. from FEMA. We also have who is an insurance agent who's also a councilman, Jim Love. He's a State Farm insurance agent. He's also going to be on the panel. And we'll have some Jacksonville Beach residents who actually have experienced damage after the hurricane. And they're going to tell you kind of their story and what they did and how they were able to get the help that they needed. And then we're also going to have a lady from the Division of Consumer Services. So it should be a very interesting, informative panel. So we encourage you to please come out, especially with hurricane season upon us, right? So it will be at Beaches Chapel. It will start at 6:30, which is a little bit earlier than we normally start our meetings, but because they have so much information to share, we wanted to make sure that everyone had ample time, and then we had ample time from the audience to ask questions. So tonight's forum, we also are allowing questions from the audience, written questions. So if you have any questions, we have forms on the back table. We can also get forms to you if you want to raise your hand. But we will go ahead and start with the candidates. They will have 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements, and then 3 minutes to respond to each question. And then if we have...
The other way around.
Sorry?
It's 3 minutes for the opening and closing.
Oh, I
Okay.
did the other way. Sorry. And then afterwards, if we have time, which I'm anticipating we'll take some questions from the audience. We have a timekeeper here, Andy. She will give you the 30-second paddle, and then once your time expires...
Paddle, I know.
And then she will let you know when time's up, and ring the bell if you go over. Just like that. Let's see if there's anything else we need to... Yes, so we are also, as we do in all of our meetings, we are videotaping the forum, so it will be uploaded to our website by tomorrow. Mr. Hazuri's assistant is also videotaping part of the forum as well, so it will be on your website, I guess. Okay. What else? Timekeeper, that's it. Okay. So we will go ahead and start the forum. We'll start with opening statements, and I'm just going to say first names since we're just casual.
We're all friends here.
We're all friends here.
Yeah.
We're family. So Lisa, we'll go ahead and start with you, and you will have 2 minutes for your opening. Sorry.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa King, and I'm a candidate for Jacksonville City Council at-large Group 1. I'm a native of Jacksonville, and I'm a wife and mother of 3 and a grandmother of 2, and I am going to have another granddaughter born in Jax Beach, hopefully soon. My fellow partner in crime, my son-in-law's father, Trey Phillips, is out in the audience. And my other daughter lives in the Beaches as well. As a native of Jacksonville, you can imagine I've spent a lot of time at the Beaches, and with 2 daughters here, I'm back and forth frequently. I consider myself a Beaches resident because I live in North Jacksonville on Heckscher Drive, east of the Intracoastal. And I know many of you in this room because of the work that I did with the Friends of the St. Johns River Ferry. I'm the grant writer for the ferry and procured $11 million worth of grants that some credit with saving the ferry. I don't take the mantle of fairy godmother, that's always Elaine Brown, nor fairy godfather, that's always Bill Gulliford, but maybe I'm the fairy princess. Professionally, I'm a grant consultant. I work with cities and counties, and so because of that, I know a lot about how cities and counties work, and I hope to bring that knowledge to the Jacksonville City Council. Also, because of the particular profession I have, I understand a lot about different funding sources and being able to bring those and get those to work together to help address problems and concerns that we all know that we have. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight and to talk with you and answer your questions, and I'm here to humbly ask for your vote. This election is expected to have very low turnout, and so you're obviously engaged citizens. So we're asking you to make sure and tell your friends and family that early voting starts Monday and election day is May 14th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you all. I'm honored to be here tonight. My wife, Carol, who's a retired teacher of 43 years, is with me tonight. My administrative assistant, Tristan Denmark, and Carlo Fossey, who's here. I know that Lisa has a number of people. And Maria, thank you for having this. And thank the Beaches Watch for doing this. You know, you don't get this many opportunities to come and talk to a forum, and we've had a few, but and we're both running for two different at-large seats of three other races. All three of them are in districts 14, 8, and 10. But I wanted to thank y'all, but more importantly too, is that for those of you who may be new at the Beaches, I was born and raised in Jacksonville. Myself, my mother and dad, and my three other brothers lived above my parents' grocery store in downtown Jacksonville. And this was a truck on the old beach road coming here every Sunday, going on the beach when you could go on the beach, get in our car, towed away as it floats into the ocean from the high tides, and those of you who have been around here. I love the Beaches. I'm so happy too that the Beaches mayors, all three have endorsed me: Janelle Wilson, Bill Gulliford, and Roy, your newest newest elected official, who's going to be replacing Bill Gulliford. We have a great relationship, I do, with the Beaches, and I have since I was elected to the legislature when I was 28. Spent 12 years there, elected mayor of Jacksonville, and then on the school board as chair, and then now on the city council. I'm looking forward to talking about the many issues down here. I'm very familiar. I've represented the Beaches, it seems like, all my public life as a state legislator, and certainly as mayor, and now on the city council. I know you'll have a number of issues, very familiar with them, and I'm happy to move forward and continue to be a representative for you on the city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well that leads us into the very first question. So Tommy, this will go to, you'll answer it first, and then Lisa, and then we'll switch back and forth, okay? So what are the most important issues for the Beaches that you plan to address?
Well, for all of Duval County, and you know, the mayor here, as well as the sheriff, is the county administrator. But for all the Beaches and for all of Jacksonville, crime is the #1 issue. We all know that. And in spite of what you may have heard in the recent mayoral races and all, crime is pretty well moving downward, but it's not enough. It's always going to be an issue. Our job is to minimize it. And I think what we've done with the number of organizations that we've created, the funding that we did with the Kids Hope Alliance, $42 million for after-school programs, and I'd like to talk some more about education a little bit later. And other than that, affordable housing and making sure that everybody is treated equally all over Duval County. For the Beaches in general, and in particular, I've already supported a number of issues as a legislator with beach erosion, putting in millions of dollars from the federal and state dollars for the Northeasterners to come in here, but also too with the dunes, funding the dunes, replanting. Penman Road, I know, is a big issue, and they're starting to work on that Monday, and they called it, I just got an update, and they called it and y'all probably, I just lost it. Y'all probably know the terminology. I never heard of rectangular rapid flashing beacon on Penman Road, but they're coordinating that, dealing with the mid-block pedestrian crossings, but also the pier, and we're issuing a procurement contract to finish the pier. It's going to go 20 feet higher, and it starts, we want to put out the contract next month in May, and prevent another hurricane from taking it down as best we can. So it's going to go up like that. I'd like to talk to you all about that. A number of other issues that y'all have, and I mentioned, we'll talk about dredging. I know resiliency is very important. The visitors here, I've always supported for the police officers to work in coordination with the police here at Jacksonville Beach, doing your highlights of your July 4th activities, and really, quite frankly, the interlocal agreement, which I think is very good right now. I don't think it needs any changes, and there's no requirement to meet on it. That's one between the city and the beaches, but maybe we ought to take a look, reviewing it every 5 or 10 years. But the beaches has a very important place in my heart. It's not just crossing the ditch. It's about being a community together, tourist attractions, and bringing people to the beach, and y'all have done a great job. It doesn't even look like the beach of the 50s. So I want to thank you all again, and I know there are a number of other issues, but then I'll be glad to try to address them, Maria, to y'all. Thank you very much.
That was 3? That was a lot.
I talked too
You
fast.
you didn't leave me any. Okay.
Don't I have 3 minutes?
Well, she said
I got
3
it.
issues.
My wife wrote a little note, slow down.
Well, I think the 3 most important issues facing the beaches are certainly resiliency and how we're going to plan for these increasingly vicious hurricanes that we're getting. We're seeing these we're in a very active cycle now. We anticipate it continuing to be a very active cycle. That's a big part of my practice, finding the funding to help communities deal with those issues. And the dredge definitely plays a role in that. Not everybody realizes that when the Army Corps of Engineers planned the dredge here, they didn't do all of the studies that they are normally required to do. That's because Obama signed an executive order to try to speed up public works projects. This was immediately after the recession. So we don't have all the data we need to be able to plan for possible impacts. And additionally, we know that the area around Jacksonville is actually a sea level rise hotspot. And so we need to have that data to be able to plan not only for the impacts of the dredge, but just the normal storm cycles and the impacts that they're going to have at the beaches. I do think that the second issue, I think, is working together, making sure that your 3 communities, as well as the city of Jacksonville, work together and communicate frequently. There's a lot, I think there needs to be more education, and the city of Jacksonville needs more education about what's in the interlocal agreements between the beaches communities and the city of Jacksonville. And if you read the candidate survey that I sent earlier in this cycle, I talked about an idea of having like a quarterly meeting between the leadership of all the beaches communities and the leadership from the city of Jacksonville to open those lines of communications. The Charter Revision Commission for the City of Jacksonville will start meeting this year, and opening and changing the interlocals could become a suggestion that they make. I've talked to a sampling of beaches elected officials, and there's a lot of people aren't really sure if it's a good idea to open them or not. While they are not consistent in how they treat each of the beaches communities, some people are concerned that things could get worse if the interlocals are opened up. And so, but there needs to be really, the beaches communities, we need to hear from them clearly what their wishes are on that matter. The third thing is the Mayport CRA, which I actually served on one of the planning committees for. As an at-large councilman, I would represent the entire city of Jacksonville, but I've talked to Councilman Gulliford about this. It's something he and I worked on together in the past, and I want to be very helpful to Councilman-elect Diamond in making sure that those plans go forward.
Okay, thank you. And that kind of segues into our next question, and Lisa, you can answer this first, and that is kind of about the Mayport Road corridor. So can you tell us what your vision of the Mayport Road corridor is, and what kind of funding mechanisms would you support for this vision?
To me, it's very embarrassing how one side of the Mayport Road looks really, really nice, y'all's side, and the city of Jacksonville side is just not on par. And so Clearly, we need to look at land use and zoning on the City of Jacksonville side, as well as code enforcement issues, and we need to try to make sure that there's some consistency and parity so that everything looks kind of the same. I know that there's a strong need for some pedestrian crossing mechanisms on Mayport Road. I actually do consult with the City of Atlantic Beach, and so we've had a lot of those conversations. A lot of the funding for those kinds of things come through the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization, or the TPO. I served on their long-range transportation plan committee about 4 years ago. The funding for transportation projects is a very long timeline. And so we need to make sure that there's as many projects as make sense for Mayport Road slotted in so that they will come out the other side. Because it's not something that we're going to be able to like push a button and have a project done in a year. I think the improved landscaping that we've seen, the improved medians, is a step in the right direction. I just don't think that the City of Jacksonville is pulling its weight on our side of the road. I don't think we've been very good neighbors.
Thank you. Tommy?
Same question. Pretty much everything, I hate to say it this way, that Lisa's talking about, but I do think we have been good neighbors. The relationship I have with Councilman Gulliford has been one-on-one every day since I've been on for the past 4 years. We're going to lose some real leadership with Bill. And on the council, 8 new members coming on board. That's why it's imperative to have sustainability on the council and our dedication to what Lisa was talking about. But let me take you another place, to Mayport Village. I've helped fund $50,000 for the master plan. That's the village that we got from, I think it was the JPA, I believe it is. And I want to work with y'all in making that another star in Jacksonville beaches, all the beaches, crown. It has great opportunities. There is a provision in there, and I don't know how many people know about it. I don't even think I remembered it until I was talking to Bill a few weeks ago, that half of that money, if there's any profits to be made, net profits, net gross profit, then half of it goes to the Port Authority, because they're the ones that gave it to us. So 7 acres, it was just lying vacant. Now, if you can have JU and the Oceanic people participate in that, I see Mayport Village, I don't want to compare it to 5 Points and the other, as truly a village. And the beaches, in an interlocal agreement, when we're talking about that, each beach, I don't have to tell y'all, has its own peculiar needs, individual needs that have to be addressed in the interlocal agreement and with the respective officials on the council and those mayors as well. So, and that's what I think I bring to the table as far as my race is concerned, is the relationship I have with the beaches, that I have with our mayor in Jacksonville, and because you don't look at Republicans and Democrats. There's no Republican Mayport or Democratic Mayport or potholes. And working with the 3 different mayors, working with the councils here at the beaches, along with us, and of course working with the new official, Councilman Diamond. And so I think, all of us are embracing each other. We all want the same thing for our community. If we succeed in downtown Jacksonville or in Jacksonville, then we're going to succeed at the beaches. And if the beaches succeed, Jacksonville's going to succeed. So I'm excited about it. The next 4 years are going to be tremendous for our city. I really believe it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, Tommy, you'll answer this one first. This is about the Jacksonville Beach boat ramp. This is property that's property of Jacksonville and has inadequate parking. How would you propose to resolve this issue?
Try to find some money through recreation. I've been talking to Janelle Wilson. Actually, I got the water tank and the fish bait, the cutting bait at the one by Safe Harbor, not the other one that you're referring to. I've been talking to them and trying to find dollars, and I will be glad to do that and work with them, because you have to get your share for more parking space. People are utilizing the boat ramp. I always get the 2 mixed up when I'm talking about them, because I like to fish out of where Safe Harbor is and then the other boat ramp that we have. And the pier is another one that I just take advantage of the fishing opportunities that we have here. But whatever funding that we need through our recreation department, to look in the budget and see if there's opportunities, as Roy comes to me, as I go to the council, to look for opportunities to help fund, not just for parking space, to pave it, and to improve it where we can. I want these boat ramps, and we put in a bunch when I was mayor. and several out here at the beach, but all over Jacksonville. It's not enough to build parks, not enough to build boat ramps, and we put a lot of boat ramps in, but you've got to maintain them. It's easy to build something. It's not that easy, but it's easy to build them. But the sustainability, as I talk about, that's my key for this whole campaign and for my public service. You can't just start a program and the next mayor comes in or the next councilman comes in, then all of a sudden you're starting from scratch again. You've got to keep moving and keep that sustainability, whether it's downtown or whether it's the beaches, wherever it might be. So again, you've got a friend here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, same question.
Well, this is where my professional experience would be a great benefit, because there are two grant funding sources that we could use for parking at that boat ramp. And obviously, any opportunity we have to bring outside funds and leverage our tax dollars so they go further is an advantage. So there's actually two funding sources we could look at: the Florida Inland Navigation District Waterways Assistance Program, and the Florida Boating Improvement Program. So it's important to get community buy-in, and whatever. Parking is always the most controversial thing. I'm a former member of the Jacksonville Planning Commission and dealt with land use and zoning matters for the city, and was ultimately chair of that. And some of the most contentious issues we dealt with were parking issues. So it's important to get community buy-in. So whatever solution that we fall on to increase parking and improve parking, that the neighbors around it who are going to be most impacted by changes to that facility are comfortable with it.
Great, thank you. So the pier's been mentioned several times. As you guys know, that's a major asset for us and the visitors here. So Lisa, the Jacksonville Pier, as you know, is owned by the city of Jacksonville and has been poorly maintained in the past. And to your point, Tommy, you know, it is about maintenance and operation. So what would you do to propose to ensure that we have, you know, better maintenance?
One of the first things that we did,
well, actually, Lisa's supposed to. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's Lisa?
Yeah.
One of the first things we did, I'm going to let Lisa tell you.
Well, I think, you know, design is really important, so that it can withstand the extreme weather that we've been having and will continue to have. And as Tommy mentioned, picking materials that are easier to maintain, so that we can make sure that our long-term exposure is as low as possible. But you know, we also have to be realistic. You know, if a Cat 5 hits us, nothing's going to withstand that. But we also know that it's an important asset for our community. I remember going to the pier as a kid. My dad was a fisherman and fishing off the pier. So it's an important tradition to continue. So that we need to continue to invest in it and promote it. Not every community has one, and it is something that people really enjoy. So now you tell them.
I'll go back, instead of talking about the money, first of all, my son lives out here, he's a teacher, but he lives on 15th and 5th, and he and I like to go, and Carol does too, go fishing on the pier, and getting to know a lot of the people that hang out there. The hurricane, you know, when we talk about hurricanes and resiliency, you know, it's 100-year, we had experienced the last 2 years, prior to this past year, 2 hurricanes, 100-year events, really, that we're not supposed to be getting every year. And of course it took a big hit on all of us, and we know the pier is always one that's going to go. So that's why next month when they start bidding out, that the design now that they have is for, and it is a jewel, let me tell you, to me, that's the jewel that you can really take advantage of. When you take a picture of the beaches, you want to see that pier, you want to see activity. You know, some of them go way beyond that, like you know, dancing on the pier and whatever else they have. The other thing we need to do, keeping in mind, we put in $800,000, I was going to tell you, before that second hurricane. So we held onto that money, waited on FEMA to come through, and now we have the money to start reconstruction at the extension of where we're going out. It's going to be a little bit shorter, I think, than the pier was, but it's going to be much higher, and hopefully will withstand any kind of hard winds or hurricane winds that may come across. I can't guarantee it, because all piers end up getting hit, but it's going to have a 20-foot incline after you go where it is now and moving upwards. So you're going to have longer fishing line, so when you go out there next time to fish. But, and then the ownership, I think this is another issue, of the store or the fishing shop that's there. Right now, it's a temporary ownership there, or managed at least. And so at some point, I think we have to start talking about, yes, we own it, but give it to the beaches to maintain, not to maintain, but to take care of who's going to be there collecting money, offering whatever sundries they may have when they go on the pier, and to make it really attractive. It needs to be more attractive, obviously, than it is, but to keep this pier going and to build on it, on its success, I think is extremely important. And this gives us an opportunity with the addition to really take advantage of what we can do dealing with the pier. And if y'all want to take over I don't mean the maintenance, I realize it's our responsibility, but to manage it and do whatever we need to do, then that's something you don't need an interlocal agreement on. It's a handshake, and that's what we can do with the council members here and our mayors here at the beaches.
Great, thank you. And so what do you think about the collision with the fishermen and the surfers? Are we ever going to have resolve that? I'm just kidding, you don't have to answer that.
Is that really a question?
Well, my son's been asking me that.
We'll draw a line.
Okay, so Tommy, you'll answer this question first, but you actually brought up Penman Road earlier, and so all three beaches communities recently passed resolutions requesting the city of Jacksonville to make needed safety improvements for the pedestrians and bicyclists. What would you do to ensure this project is approved and funded?
Well, I support it, first of all, not to placate anyone here. I've talked to John Pappas, our Public Works Director. They're meeting with some beach officials, I'm not sure who, maybe Monday, to talk about, remember I said about the crosswalk, I never can remember the flashing beacon on Penman Road, but it's a mid-block pedestrian crossing. That can be another central piece for Jacksonville. I mean, right now we know, or for the beaches, we know what it looks like. I do support funding, whatever they come up with a plan, and I'll be working with them and, of course, with the council. I keep mentioning the councilman because we try to treat each district councilman as district councilman, but we have 5 of us who will end up being the 6th person representing any district in Jacksonville. So, but I support what we're trying to do. I know, who is it here that's been pushing that for a long, long time? Thank you, it was you, and thank you for doing that. I kid Bill Gulliford about it, and I know it's a slow process, but I think John Pappas, who's our Public Works Director, is working with the officials here, and you're going to see some action taking place. It may not happen overnight because each road costs $1 million to pave, and I don't know how much the expense would be, but they'll come up with a design with y'all in agreement, and then move forward on it, and it'll be done incrementally, I'm sure. But whatever funding is required, I will certainly support it.
Great. Lisa?
So I drive down Penman every time I go to visit my daughter. So I am very familiar with the conditions on Penman. And as Tommy said, the project is at a starting point now. It's important to keep funding going. And so that's why somebody who understands the funding source through the TPO and can be an advocate to make sure that that funding continues to flow. Because usually the getting started part, frankly, is the hardest part. Once a project is started, the inclination is for the TPO to keep funding it, but nothing is guaranteed. So that's going to be, I think, a large piece of my work, just because of what I do professionally. It's kind of my happy place, and so it's a place where I feel I can be most useful and most effective for a lot of projects, and Penman is a key one.
Great, thank you. So a lot of our beaches residents, I think, don't even realize that the at-large candidates also represent us here at the beaches. And I think probably a reason for that is because of lack of communication. And so I know both of you had mentioned earlier that you wanted to ensure that we had more open lines of communication. So Lisa, we believe that's essential as well. What will you do to support effective communication with the beaches during your term?
Well, I think the most important skill any elected official that serves you has is the ability to listen And so I want to spend a lot of time listening, because I think we're more effective leaders when we really know on the ground what's going on. It is very important for you to remember that you don't have just one councilman, you have 6, because all 5 at large also represent you. I know that my plan is to communicate a lot with the elected officials out here, as well as leaders of your neighborhood associations. I think getting down to kind of that level it gives you a much more detailed point of view about what the issues are in a community. So we're going to schedule a series of coffee meetings, and then I'd also like to look at town halls and office hours, where I'm going to have a regular time. I'll be at the beaches, so that if with just open door, anybody who wants to come and talk to me about anything, that I'm there and ready to listen. So a combination of all those things, I think, will really help with communication. I know that for y'all to come all the way to City Hall to talk to council, that is you guys have to be really, really mad to come all the way in town, and it shouldn't have to get to that point. You should be able to rely that we're going to be here and accessible to you, and I'm here to make that commitment to you. I think the fact that I am here should be a testament to how serious I am about that. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about these issues tonight.
And I have been doing that, not necessarily meeting all the time out here, which I have done when Benny Furlong was alive and other mayors prior to the mayors we have here today. But I maintain a communication with all the beaches mayors. I have done that. Bill Gulliford has been my conduit, because I know what he's interested in, I'm always interested in, because it helps Jacksonville Beach. The same way it's going to be with Roy Diamond. I've already had coffee with him out here to talk about it, met with, I told you that they had, the mayors have endorsed me, but I think they endorsed me not just because I'm running. I think they did it because they know of my track record from my legislative days to now, in working with the beaches and helping the beaches and making sure that they're, that you listen, you learn, and you lead with those issues. And that's what I've tried to do. And I don't think we've missed a beat. I haven't heard anything. I mean, we've done a lot of good things, just, and I hate to use Bill's name all the time, but just watching him, because he used to be mayor down here, and I know what the relationship is, and you know what's going on. And you can't, when you come to the beaches, you know what's happening down here. We come down here quite often, the Four Corners. Bill was telling me how you got started in Atlantic Beach or Neptune, and trying to put the two together. But that is one of the busiest places, like downtown used to be, at where Ferskis and Levy's and Rosenblum and all. I mean, that's the busiest place with the restaurants. I love going there and watching the people. That's what I want to see all over Jacksonville. Of course, you've got to manage all that growth, but just to have those kinds of activities. But I'll be coming down here just as I always have, and I'll be listening. And again, the direct communication will be with the council member. You can't talk about issues that you're going to vote on, of course, but you can hear what they've got and see the bills that they're filing or want to file. So I'm there, and I think what Lisa said, and I think all of us would be that way. I don't think anybody's going to make the beaches a stepchild. They better not. And I haven't seen that in the 4 years I've been there. It didn't happen when Jim Jarborough, who worked for me when I was mayor, and then when he was councilman himself. And so, I mean, we've always had that common string that we both, umbilical cord really, that we've worked together on the issues here at the beaches. And it's not without having fist fights occasionally, not literally, but that's gone. That's in the past. I haven't seen that in a long, long time in all my public service, that there is a great relationship. And I don't see any arguments. And don't forget the legislators that are out here too, that they're part and parcel of the success of the beaches, because a lot of things we have to get from, for example, beach erosion money comes through the state and in many cases. So we need to make sure that that relationship continues in one big circle.
Okay, thank you. Tom, you'll answer this question first. So, as you know, crime is a major concern in Jacksonville and as well as here at the beach. And statistics show that a large percentage of crimes committed at the beaches are actually caused by non-beaches residents. So what, if anything, do you believe Jacksonville should or could do to help with this problem?
Well, I don't know directly what is going on at the beaches as far. Well, I know there are, like you said, they are from out of town and not locals. And I'm the liaison for the library, Yay libraries on the board. The library, the school system, and the sheriff's office. So we meet, and Tristan goes once a week with the with the sheriff and his chiefs. And we talk about the issues out there, and if there's any particular problems that we need to do, then the sheriff will bring, I keep saying this, Mayor, the sheriff will bring it up, or we'll bring it to his attention. And if there's anything that he needs as far as both fire and police, quite frankly, that we're there and ready to serve. We have a chaplain here. There he is, and he knows our relationship that I have with them. And if I knew any particular issues, but what we do in Jacksonville with our crime prevention committee that the city council created, the president of the council did 46-member of safety and crime prevention, in addition to what we're doing with the Kids Hope Alliance. These are local issues, but the sheriff keeps referring to the gangs. There are 40 gangs here in Jacksonville. And opioid is a big issue. That's another thing that Gulliford's been involved in, and I'm on that committee. That's leading to a lot of the crime that we have here. Even if they're out from out of town, a lot of it has to do with drug related. And we're trying to get a handle on that. And so I'm not giving you a specific answer now, because if there was something in specific that we need to deal with, the sheriff is right there with us, and I'm working with him on a number of issues right now. Better answer.
Oh, no, that was a good answer. I'm very proud to have the support of our first responders, police and fire. I'm the only person in my race who's been endorsed by police and fire. I come from a law enforcement family. In fact, my nephew, until recently, served in the Jacksonville Beach Police Department. And so he had talked to me a lot about what he had dealt with out here. It's probably a controversial idea, but it's been used by some of my other clients. Key West is one of my clients, by the way. And what they do is they have cameras on their bridges so that they can read license plates when people come back and forth. And that helps them be able to identify who perpetrators are. And if indeed most of the crime is being caused by non-residents, that would be one way, be a tool for law enforcement to be able to better track. Because we know that a lot of crime comes from a few people, and that could be a tool that they could use to deal with that problem.
Okay, great. Tommy, you mentioned the opioid crisis that we're dealing with throughout the country, not just here, obviously. So I'll let Lisa answer this first, but what are your thoughts as far as addressing the situation?
To me,
well, I'll let Lisa answer first, since you answered that one first, but since you brought it up.
Well, almost everybody has had somebody in their family who has struggled with substance abuse issues, and a lot of the problems that seem to be difficult to solve that we have is because governments, their funding sources and their responsibilities are siloed away from each other. So there's almost an incentive for different levels of government, different government agencies to kind of push off problems on other agencies. Ultimately, we all pay for it, and the problem is that we pay for it in what's generally the least efficient way. And a big part of this problem is people having access to health care. And the fact that that's still a problem that our country struggles with is a big consideration in this. But I know that, like any difficult problem, there's not one silver bullet to solving it. There's so many where going after doctors that are oversubscribers. Even I know communities are looking at suing pharmaceutical companies to get them to change behavior, and also to get funding to help deal with the problems in their communities. So we have to understand that there's not one answer, that there's many answers, but that we all have to work together, because this is the most devastating problem that many of us have ever seen. I know that all of you know of someone who was prescribed an opioid because of an injury and then became addicted, and how very addicting it is, and how very difficult it is, and how people struggle with it. It is not, I know some people like to think of substance abuse as a failing, or that's something that happens to other people. But we all know that this has impacted almost every family in one way or another. And so because of that, it's everybody's problem, and we all have to work together to solve it.
Thank you.
We, I keep mentioning Bill, but Bill is involved. He's the chairman of this opioid committee that I'm on, and several other council members. We put in $600,000 last year for addressing opioids in Jacksonville. District 10 on the northwest side of Jacksonville has the most cases that we experience. The biggest issue now is not just the opioids, it's the fentanyl that they put in, the opioids that takes you out. And we're working now with this program, and we just funded it again, additional dollars rather, with several hospitals, St. Vincent's being the number one, but several of the hospitals, they keep coming on board with us, working with the fire department, and they're the first responders for that, and they have the, you'll have to help me, Narcan, thank you. And maybe the police will start taking that with them, but the fire, the first responders are right there with them, and they've saved a lot of lives, but we've lost some. But it has gone down in Jacksonville. This last month, there was a spike in opioid use here in Jacksonville. But what we're doing is having a program, like drug related, they go and they get treated, not just given, if you're out, then you give them the Narcan, and then they're back again and off and running again, but they're trying to take them off of it. And if you look, I don't have the statistics, I wish I had it. You can see them, you can see the numbers in every district in Jacksonville, including the beaches, and see where the most are and how many people have passed and how many survived and how many are getting off, how many have dropped out of the program. Not very many, but the different hospitals have taken a big leap in helping us address this issue. And now Bill is on that statewide committee that the governor created, and we're suing one of the pharmaceutical companies. Jacksonville is. I know that the state was doing it too. I was just reading something what the Attorney General was talking about. But we're suing, and you see where they just, and a lot of this stuff is imported from China, and that's the other thing that we have to worry about. And they won't take our garbage, but they'll send the opioids over here. So I don't know how the recycling products that is, but we're addressing that here firsthand. I mean, every day, and when our committee meets, we get reports on what's been done. It's been very, very successful, and this was something new. It's just a year old, but if you look at the statistics, you'll see major improvement. And again, what the hospitals are doing to help treat these individuals and not just giving them the Narcan and then just go home and start all over again. But you've got to get the fentanyl that they're putting in there as well. That's the killer for all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take a pause for just a minute. That's all the questions we had prepared. Are there any questions from the audience that you'd like for us to consider? Okay, just having to read people's writing, so sorry. Okay, so this question's specifically for Lisa, but actually I can ask both of you because it's germane to both of you. So what differentiates yourself from your opponent? So Lisa, you can go first, and then
How do you differentiate yourself?
what differentiates yourself from your opponent?
I'm a lifelong resident of Jacksonville. I think my professional experience is quite different than his in that I've served cities and counties. Let's see, what else? Well, I think the biggest thing is I show up, okay? Not just to this forum, he has not attended a forum since January that I have been present at. And I'm very frustrated about that. Particularly that showing up for you is this job. And I don't, life happens. People can't be everywhere. It's a big city. But when it's happened more than twice, because I think we're up to 5 now, it's a pattern. And I'm very disappointed in that. And again, I don't know what it's about. I wish he was here to explain why. We have a television taping tomorrow. We're going to tape this week in Jacksonville. So I'm going to ask him then. And so you should tune in on Sunday and hear what his answer is. Because I think that's the most important thing for someone that you expect to represent you, is that they'll commit to show up for you. And I've shown that I'll do that, and I'll continue to do that. It's particularly disappointing because he's not even shown up at debates in the district that the governor appointed him to represent, that he's not running for re-election in. So, you know, he made a vow to those citizens to represent them, and he's not showing up to talk with them about the issues in this race. So I'm uncomfortable to be that direct, frankly, with you about this, because I feel like I have enough things to tell you about my own record, and I'm happy to stand on those without even mentioning my opponent. But you know, I'm very frustrated, so I just had to share that.
Thank you. Tommy?
Well, what did you say about not saying anything good about anybody? I don't know what they're really.
Yeah,
I don't see him. I don't know him really. I've only seen him a couple of times, and the big difference is experience. I mean, that's the biggest difference. And he likes to talk about my age from time to time, and I don't want to talk about it. So I pulled a Reagan on the other day, and I told him I wouldn't talk about his youthfulness if he didn't talk about my experience. But he's 56 himself. So, but more importantly is, do I get the job done? Do I deserve re-election? And I think that's the biggest difference, and that's why I'm asking y'all here tonight. I look at my record from bridge tolls to smell to being the chairman of the besides being mayor, to being chairman of the school board, and then now dealing with the human rights ordinance. It's a big challenge for all of us, whether you support it or not. It's really been a major issue for Jacksonville to succeed in that area, to open the city up. The Kids Hope Alliance in helping after-school programs and after summer camp programs, the $42 million we put in there to help fight crime, individual grants that we give to individual smaller bodies to help address the problems in their churches or schools, wherever it might be. The library system, introduced a bill for $1 million 2 years ago to put $1 million for materials and books for our libraries, and then this past year we put in $800,000 to extend our library hours, that now all throughout Duval County, everybody's open most of the time, all of the time, and so you don't have to worry about going to another regional library when you can go to your local one. When I was in the legislature, we helped fund the library here at the beaches. You all didn't have books in there, and I found $80,000, it's been a long time now, to put books in there so you could open it at a reasonable, on a reasonable date. But so these are the differences, and it would be that way with any candidate. You know, I don't have somebody that's been in office, and I don't talk about them. I mean, I think anybody who wants to run for office should. This is my last hurrah, and I'm not asking for this. It's just I've spent my time in public service, and I think if you look at my record, you might not always agree with my votes, but I don't look at it as a Democratic vote or a Republican vote, not on the local level. It's too important that we cross the aisles, and whether you're supporting the mayor or you don't support the mayor, it's about, I respect the office, I've been there, and I know there's a lot to do, and I think I can help lead in that direction, and that's what my intention is, to continue the sustainability of where we are and where we're going. And like I said earlier, 4 years, it's going to be tremendous for Jacksonville, not just downtown Jacksonville, but for all over, and maybe we'll get to the Super Bowl on top of that.
Okay, so this is a question about the school board. So Tommy, I'll let you answer first. What role do you believe the City Council plays in working with our school board and supporting public education? That's
a great question. I don't disagree with charter schools. I don't particularly have a great love because it's taking money away from our public school system. But more importantly, there are some good ones in private schools and parochial schools. I support all of those. Having been on the school board for 8 years, having been the husband of a school teacher, having chaired the committee in the legislature, K-12 committee, when I was in Tallahassee in the legislature, I think I understand how important the public education system is. And I see the state legislature right now eroding public education as we know it. They don't give us the funds. You hear they're talking about doing a sales tax. 50 of our schools, most of our schools are 50 years of age or older. They need to consolidate some of the schools. They need to build. We get no money, the city, this district doesn't, from the state for capital improvement projects. And so some will go to the charters, and I'm not picking on them. I just don't mind. I want a level playing field and being the liaison for the school system. I work with them on a daily basis. And the Kids Hope Alliance works hand in hand with the school system. Many of the programs that we have in the Kids Hope Alliance are directly involved with the school system. And I might add, this year, we put $60 million out there for mental health, which is a big issue when we talked about opioids a while ago. And so I'm excited what we can do. I just don't want them to be a stepchild here in Jacksonville. You know, the difference between us and St. Johns County is St. Augustine has their share of low-income kids, and St. Augustine and Hastings, but in Duval, we're a rural, suburban, and urban area. 842 square miles. The bus system is very expensive because you have to go from the beaches, if perhaps, or to Rebald, or to Mandarin, or to the west side. And so there's a direct relationship. We had a meeting, and I meet every month with the assistant superintendent and the chairman of the school board, who happens to live in Mandarin, Lori Hershey. And also too that we had a joint meeting with the council and the city council and the school board a month ago. We need to do that more often than once a year, and they hadn't had one in a couple of years, so I'm encouraging them to do that. You've got a great new superintendent, Dr. Green, from Manatee County. You've got a good school board, and not as good as it was when we were on there, but it's pretty good. But you remember when Nancy Bronner was on there, and Nancy and I have a great relationship, and it was super, and it's still going to be. But this issue that's coming up for the sales tax, I haven't gotten involved in it. That's a tough issue to raise that kind of money, and there are going to be people pulling at both ends, but they don't have the money. And it's not about money, but it is about educating the kids. The state has a lot to do with what happens in all 67 counties, and shame on them for putting them back on the back burner and not moving forward with them. Thank you.
So I believe in public education. I'm a graduate of Wolfson High School in town, and I made a conscious decision. All three of my children were educated in Duval County Public Schools. And so I believe that public education is an important institution. Of course, we all can guess who's sitting in the back row probably asked this question. Your school board member is back there.
Hey, we did a good job. Take it back.
Yeah. So, but I think that the city needs to be a good partner to the school board, and so there's a couple ways that we can do that. The first thing is that we need to make sure that sidewalks and roads around schools and routes to schools are safe and well maintained, so that children and their parents can get to and from school safely. And so we also need to be very conscious of any changes that we do to land use and zoning around schools, so that businesses that are not good fits for schools are not allowed to locate. As somebody who sat on the planning commission, we had plenty of applications where people were like, oh, liquor store, pool hall, internet cafe, all that kind of thing around the schools. Not a good idea. And so that's an important role. And also, we need to become, as a city, we need to become more aggressive in investing in children and families, particularly children and families in crisis. Most large cities have a lower violent crime rate than we do, and they invest more in children and families. Schools can only do so much with children if they show up to school hungry, ill-prepared, if they're coming from an unsafe environment, and the city has a role to play in all of that. Obviously not the entire role. The state has roles to play in that as well. But we need to invest in children and families. I believe our people in Jacksonville are as much of our infrastructure as anything else. Our people are what make our city. And our people are what attract employers here. People who are ready, who have the education and training, are ready to go to work, and our schools play a role in that. So the city needs to be a good partner to the school board in making sure that children are safe and prepared.
Okay. So we're about 5 minutes till 8. I want to go ahead and have you do your closing statements. So I apologize if I didn't specifically ask your question, but the candidates will be here afterwards, and you can ask them one-on-one or ask them some other questions that you may have thought of. So we'll go ahead and have your closing statements. They're 2 minutes each. And I'd like for you to just tell us who your mentor was or is, and why you are the best candidate for the Beaches. So, Tommy, we'll let you start.
My mentor, well, me. No, I worked when I was in college at JU, and I also went to Andrew Jackson Public Schools, Kirby Smith and the rest, but not to satisfy her, it was Wilson and Jackson. I just want to make sure they knew. I have I forgot your other mentor. Well, I worked in Lou Ritter's office when he was mayor. I was finishing up as an intern and stayed there for a year when he was mayor of Jacksonville. I wanted to run for mayor since I was in the 8th grade, I think. You don't always achieve those goals. And I worked for Hens Tansler for about 6 months or a year before I ran for the legislature. But also in Congressman Bennett's office, I was an intern, won this award for Florida Center for Education and Politics, and spent the summer there in Washington. But in Carl Ogden, when he was the House Majority Leader, I was his executive assistant. But beyond that, my desire for public service has just been all my life. I'm the only one in the family that's really had that kind of interest, because it's about serving. And you know, on a national level, of course, I think people our age, it's John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, on how, you know, you can give back to your community. Everybody really in a democracy serves as an elected official, I think, whether they're serving as volunteers or whether they're serving as an elected official. I hope that I've represented y'all well as a state legislator for 12 years, as mayor of Jacksonville, and also as the member of the school board for 8 years, and then now on the city council. We still have a lot of work to do. We need the sustainability, and again, I know it feels like it's my closing, but don't forget that there are 8 new members. It's tough to get started, and so they're going to need the same experience and build that up. It won't take them that long. It'll take them a little while, but so they'll need us to help guide in ways that we can, not to control them. But my time is up. Thank you.
As somebody who has lived in Jacksonville our whole life and has been involved in our community through the nonprofit sector, through community organizations, and as an appointed city official on the Planning Commission and in the Housing Community Development Commission, I have so many role models, amazing role models, and people like Tommy Hazuri and Bill Gulliford and Matt Carlucci and Eric Smith and Elaine Brown. And I have relationships with these people that I know that if I ever had a question and not know how to handle something, I know that I would have someone that I could call and ask for advice. I'm somebody who I like to understand the history of how we got to a certain place before we can make decisions on how to move forward. And I certainly don't think that I have all the answers, and I don't think any one person does. So I think what you want is somebody who represents you on city council, someone who's independent, but asks for lots of different opinions and lots of advice, and has experience and good judgment to be able to move forward in a way that makes sense for everybody. And that's the kind of council person that I want to be for you. That I come at every issue independently with no preconceived notions about what the best way to move forward is, and I'm going to do the work. I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to talk to experts, and I'm going to talk to former elected officials and current elected officials, and I'm going to come up with an opinion that I can, even if you don't agree with me on it, I can defend it. And it's not going to be, well, so-and-so told me to vote this way. It's going to be because I came to that opinion based on a lot of hard work.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. And we want to thank you for your public service that you've already given the city and here, and we look forward to what you can do for us at the
Maria,
Beaches.
I don't mean to interrupt. What Lisa said earlier, this is so true. No matter who your candidate is, if we don't get out and vote, they expect between 7 and 10% at the most, maybe, in this election. You could elect President Trump again. You could elect J. Edgar Hoover. If you don't turn out for your candidate, it's going to be, anybody can get elected in this. No matter how hard we work, no matter how much money you spend, how much campaigning you're doing, and it's really important. We had 20% turnout this past election, the mayoral election. The year before that was 30-some-odd%. So it's come down, and people really, if they're going to get who they elect, and it's just so important to turn out, no matter who you vote for. And I hope and pray that the Beaches turns out like you've never done before, as well as the city, the whole city in itself, because it's really important for all of us.
Well, I think of it as an opportunity. You can have an outside influence on who represents you if you all turn out.
So thank you, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you all.